There's a famous story that says years ago, a reporter asked John Lennon,
"John, is Ringo the best drummer in the world?"
to which John replied,
"Ringo's not even the best drummer in the Beatles."
if there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, it's this. That never happened.
Really?
If there's two things I want you to take away from this video, it's one, that never happened, and two, as relates to drumming,
Ringo was a genius.
Now, there are many people that slag on Ringo, calling him the luckiest drummer of all time because he hooked up with the other members of the Beatles. But I'm here to say that Ringo stands in his own right as an absolute genius and a master of his instrument.
It can be argued that Ringo Starr was the first rock and roll drummer. He wasn't the first drummer to play rock and roll, but he was the first rock and roll drummer.
What do I mean by that? Well, if you bring aesthetics into it, everything that we associate with what a rock and roll drummer is starts with Ringo.
First off, Ringo played with matched grip. What does that mean?
There's basically two ways to hold drumsticks. There's traditional, and there's matched. Traditional grip came from marching drums that used to have to sling their drums on their side, and to avoid having an awkward angle with your elbow and your shoulder, they developed this sort of secondary grip for the left hand. Matched grip, which is just like what it sounds like, was used orchestrally by timpani players forever, but not that many drummers were using it at the time when Ringo really popularized it. You had jazz players playing this way, but then Ringo came along and was playing like this.
Ringo also put himself up on a riser, putting his head at equal level with the other members of the band, which kind of is a normal thing nowadays, but at the time, it really wasn't that practical or done that often.
You go from this to this.
Sure, he wasn't the first to do it, but he was among the first to make it really popular.
Ringo also had this amazing character and personality that was just as charming and witty and interesting and funny as the other guys in the band. So whenever interviews happened, he was just as smart, just as quick-witted, and just as cool as the other guys. Now those are just aesthetics, but in popular culture, and especially in rock and roll, aesthetics are a big deal. But could he play?
The Beatles recorded 150 iconic songs, and you can argue that the drum parts for all of those are perfect.
It's hard enough to come up with and record one iconic drum part that may be studied for a century or more, but to come up with 150 and to just do it again and again and again and again?
What am I talking about? Well,
let's take for example the song She Loves You. An average drummer would probably play the introduction something like this. Fine, totally works. But what does Ringo do? Ringo does this. And do you see how instantly recognizable that rhythm is? He's coming up with a pattern where he's playing time on the floor tom using that low drum instead of the cymbals of the hi-hat.
now sure, big band drummers had kept time on the floor tom, most popularly in songs like Sing, Sing, Sing.
But Ringo uses it to drive the introduction. So again, it sounds something like this.
Then there's the weird rhythm that he does every other bar. It's kind of a triplet, it's kind of not. It doesn't fit with anything else that's going on in the song. It doesn't relate to anything else that's going on in the song, and yet it's perfect. Now take the song In My Life. Pretty straightforward ballad, and most drummers would play it like this.
There are places I remember in my life, though some have changed.
What does Ringo do? He provides space and gives it room to breathe.
There are places I remember in my life, though some have changed.
It's amazing the space that he provides, yet still implies a very solid rhythm. And using that random hi-hat hit to it's just interesting orchestration and a neat use of color.
Now what about a song like Help? Now, help is really interesting because it dances between the feels of straight and swung. What does that mean? Well, you can have straight eighth notes like this, or you can have swung eighth notes like this.
Ringo manages to straddle between that feel with his iconic Ringo eighth note that isn't quite a shuffle swing and isn't quite straight.
And in the song Help, going into the B sections, he doesn't swing it. He plays it straight. So whereas an average drummer would have played those fills like this, Ringo plays it like this.
And once you hear it that way, you can't hear it any other way.
Swung, straight.
Instantly iconic and memorable.
Tomorrow Never Knows, the first rock and roll recording with a loop. That's right, Ringo was playing along to a loop, doing this pattern. This was a big new thing. Putting on a pair of headphones, listening to a pre-existing loop and playing along with it and making it feel that good. It's genius.
Going back to another ballad, the George Harrison composition Something, if an average drummer was going to play time on it, they'd probably do something like this. But what does Ringo do? Ringo plays this.
Something in the way she moves attracts me like no other lover.
Once again, providing space, but a solid rhythm upon which the song can be built.
Here's another cool thing. Ringo was left-handed,
He was a left-handed drummer playing a right-handed kit.
which meant the fills that he was often creating were kind of non-standard because he was leading with his left, whereas the right-handed drum set is sort of designed to lead with your right. For example, if I were to lead with my right hand and play a very straightforward fill, it would sound like this. But now if I lead with my left hand, it forces me to change it a little bit just to be able to travel around the drums. Ringo did this kind of stuff all the time.
This probably comes best into play in the introduction to the song Come Together.
Watch how the left hand leads these drum fills, which kind of makes it sound disjointed but connected at the same time. Kind of perfect for Come Together. I love that drum part. It's so much fun to play. And it's a challenge for a right-handed drummer like me.
Then as we get into the verse of that song, one more time, an average drummer would have probably played the verses this way. But what does Ringo do? Ringo does this. So the feel is happening, but the texture and the timbre of it is kind of different and interesting and original. So together, the intro and the verse sounds like this.
Listen to what Ringo does on the toms on a song like Rain or Day in the Life. He's orchestrationally using those drums to drive not only the rhythm of the song, but the message of the song, and to make it just feel so good.
Ringo always managed to find the perfect part for the song, making it iconic and making it hard to imagine what that song would sound like without Ringo's drumming. Now, apart from Ringo's iconic aesthetic sense, his choices of originality in playing and musicality, Ringo's sense of time was impeccable.
When Giles Martin was working on the Love album for Cirque du Soleil, he was amazed by how he could cut from track to track and take to take, and Ringo's timing would be perfect. He didn't have to mess with it at all to make it all line up.
There's a joke that metronomes use a Ringo to make sure that they have good time. Another aspect of Ringo's genius, which allowed the Beatles to be the Beatles, was his patience.
He kind of was almost like a drum machine for John, Paul, and George, where they could do take after take after take
After take,
after take,
after take.
and Ringo would just diligently sit there and play.
You could have a song like Let It Be,
27 takes,
or The Long and Winding Road,
27 takes,
or something,
36 takes,
or You Never Give Me Your Money,
36 takes,
While My Guitar Gently Weeps,
44 takes,
Happiness is a Warm Gun,
65 takes,
Sexy Sadie.
110 takes.
There's even a 27-minute version of Helter Skelter. Ringo even played 102 takes of the song Not Guilty, which didn't even end up on the White Album. Not only was he patient and willing to play take after take, but he was totally open to new and creative ways of miking his drums or tuning them or trying different things, playing tracks backwards, putting tea towels over his toms to get different timbres and different sounds. He was open to all of it. He was always experimenting, and he was always willing to try something different and something new.
Groove, feel, timing, originality, temperament, patience.
There's also the fact that the man wrote the song Octopus's Garden. I mean, come on. Can you imagine bringing a song that you wrote to John and Paul and saying, hey, what do you think?
And here's the thing, Ringo's still doing it. He just turned 80 years old, and he still sounds fantastic. He's been going on tour with his all-star band since 1989. He's put out over 20 solo albums, 8 since 2003, and they're actually really cool and fun.
I guess the ultimate thing about Ringo is you can take any one of the single aspects that I was talking about, whether it's his aesthetic sense, his iconographic status, his groove, his originality, his approach to creating parts, the unbelievable legacy of the songs that he's left behind. Any one of those would be enough to put him in the pantheon of genius. But you put them all together in one guy who's been doing it for 60 plus years, it's unbelievable. Finally, you could argue that Ringo has influenced millions of musicians, especially drummers, to pick up a pair of sticks and start playing to begin with, or to try and push the boundaries of what the drum set can do within the context of a pop song.
So if you ever hear someone talking bad about Ringo Starr,
Please remember, number one, this never happened.
Ringo's not even the best drummer in the Beatles.
And number two, if anyone speaks ill of Ringo Starr, they have no idea what they're talking about. Because when it comes to drumming,
Ringo was a genius.
thank you, Ringo.